The argument that atheists want to make is that if human beings are going to be truly moral, then, quote, quote, they should not need to be forced or threatened by a god to get there. In general terms, I agree with that, but there's a problem. I've been trying to identify the problem. The problem from inside the Christian framework is that if God is love, which is, one of our necessary postulates, if God is a loving God, then you know what? I don't even know where I'm going with this. Anyway, okay, if God is a loving God, then it's not okay. If God is a loving God, then it is not a question of fearing him. That question has the same absurdity as, have you stopped beating your wife yet? Okay? That question has the same absurdity in logic as, have you stopped beating your wife yet? Both answers are wrong, because first you have to agree with the assumption that you, as the object of the question, have been beating your wife. Okay, so it's the wrong question. The question itself is evil. Okay, and what we Christians believe about the nature of evil is that, for example, it is a polytheistic system that assumes that, quote unquote, the devil is interested in forcing people, or even encouraging people, into joining, quote, quote, false religions. Okay? There's a level at which we do not need to worry about the so-called false religions, because the primary premise is that if we're wrong, a moral God will sort that out. Okay? And obedience to any God should be from love. But, okay, here's the problem we have with, witchcraft. Even conceding that witchcraft is not equal to Satanism, the problem is that, with the threefold goddess of witchcraft is basically you have the okay, I want to get to a point about the maiden and the crone. It's not coming to me. Anyway, as a Christian, my problem is not with the framework of other religions, or whether this or that religion is wrong. Okay, I'm not that level of expert. If there is a God, not necessarily my God, but if there is a God, then by definition, God will sort all that out. Okay? the problem is that you can't have it both ways. You can't have it both ways. If you specifically say that, for example, any religious tradition anywhere is based on a delusion about a boogeyman, okay, and see, this is where dishonesty creeps into the atheist position. Okay, the Christian framework says that atheism is a religion, not because we are attempting to be insulting, for example. Okay, but because we believe that basically Satan is the source of a false tradition. Okay, so we speak of atheism as being a false religion because it's something that requires an a priori assumption about the nature of God, even though the proposition is that God does not exist. Okay, so I understand how an atheist gets offended by the notion, well, you're engaged in a false religion. That's not the way that that's not the way that a strictly logical religionist ought to speak to an atheist. At the same time, see, here's the problem that I have with the whole, reality versus fiction debate about the existence of God. You cannot have it both ways. You cannot, you cannot set up a situation in which, okay, atheism as your pet peeve, as the thing that you're on about, as the thing that you, as a human being, wish that, like all other rational human beings, would just wake up and imitate. Okay? You can't say that and then turn around and say, the Christian, let me put it this way, the Christian position about atheism is that it is impossible to say both that human beings have essential dignity and that there is no God. Okay? Because here, okay, we're talking about symbol breakdown again. We're talking about symbol breakdown again. The problem is you can't take the proposition that we as finite human beings have dignity, and yet the result for every single one of us in all of history, all of space, all of time, etc., is that we die dead, go poof, and there's nothing. Okay, that's one of the foundational Christian positions. Now, if, as I believe, all religions, not just Christianity, are speculations about the nature of eternity. Okay, so the desire to have, any given power watching over us, I don't care at this point whether you're a Taoist, a Buddhist, a Krishna, a Mormon. Okay, the desire for a God, the desire for an observer, is something that runs through all of the thinking about morality traditions of man. If you take that away from man in a legalistic sense, you're basically killing the human imagination. Okay? Just to give an example, all right? All right. Ayn Rand believed in what I'm going to call the myth of perfect human rationality. The flaw in her argument, as far as I could see, was that her argument would work fine if there were, for example, only ever such a thing as the human conscious mind. Okay? And whatever you believe about the subconscious, for example, okay, Carl Jung dealt in symbols. I'm not necessarily saying he was a religionist, but Carl Jung dealt in the connectedness of human symbols in the subconscious mind. Okay? What if all human religion was actually an attempt to process that, to process the subconscious impulses into an art form that is understandable? Okay. Basically, that is as far as I can go with what I have to say about this. But it was the position of my mentor, C.S. Lewis, that effectively, if you attempt to eliminate all the moral absolutes from your system, from your system of belief, and, for example, you want to make the ruling that it is religion as a process that is immoral, then eventually you end up destroying all human thought. Okay, at very least you end up with a result like Brave New World. You end up with a culture where people are obsessed with sex, obsessed with death, and the nightmare of the thing is that they thought they had identified the, for example, the so-called evolutionary or rationalized source of the religious impulse in man, and they tried to cater to that. But the nightmare of it was that, basically religion was made up of singing and made up of a combination of basically peace-enforcing drugs and the deliberate encouragement of the invocation of individual death. Okay, so the question was not, quote unquote, whether you believed in a higher observer, whether you believed in a higher power, whatever. Okay, the function of religion had been reduced to if there is a higher force, then we ask it to destroy us. That's not exactly how Huxley phrased it, but that's what it came to in my mind. And like I said, I'm functioning on my intellectual territory, so I'm going to provide my own definitions for what I've seen. Okay, you've got Brave New World on the one end, and okay, this is what I call the Perelandra problem. Okay, which is that, like, if human evil really exists, then we have the potential to spread it throughout the stars to, whatever race we happen to reach in, like, all of space and time. Okay, that's what I call the Perelandra problem.